You've probably heard this idea before, right? That our schools are basically designed like factories, that they're just assembly lines churning out compliant workers for the system. It's a really powerful and honestly a pretty persistent idea. So today we're going to dig into it. We're going to take a hard look at where it comes from and, way more importantly, where we can go from here. And this quote, man, it just perfectly captures that whole critique. The idea that the entire system, from the ringing bells to the desks in neat little rows, was all engineered back in the 19th century just to get kids ready for a life of boring, repetitive labor. And you know what? To a lot of us, it kind of feels true. But what if that whole story, the one that feels so right, is actually a myth? What if the history we've all been told is just completely wrong? Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we are going to completely deconstruct the school factory myth. Then we'll explore something called the hidden curriculum, which is the reason it feels so real. From there, we'll talk about a powerful antidote, this idea of self-ownership, and then give you a really practical framework for finding your own purpose called Ikigai. So let's get right into the history. Where did this whole factory model school idea even come from? Well, the answer is probably not when you think it is. Get this. You might be surprised to learn that the phrase factory model of education doesn't even show up in print until 1970. Yeah, 1970. Sure, it was used as a metaphor for efficiency by some reformers way back in the early 20th century, but it only became this widespread critique that we know today in the 1980s. So what does that tell us? It tells us this is a modern rhetorical tool, not some 19th century design principle. So let's just put the myth and the reality side by side. The popular story is that Horace Mann, the father of American public schools, went to Prussia in the 1840s and brought back this system designed to create factory workers. But the reality? Mann's own report on the Prussian system never, not once, mentions factories. In fact, he actually warned against its potential for creating blind obedience. And you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to this direct quote from Horace Mann's report. He saw how powerful the Prussian system was and basically thought, hey, if they can use this to create obedient subjects for a king, then we can definitely use it to create engaged citizens for a republic. His goal was literally the exact opposite of what the myth claims. And that distinction is so crucial because it means the system isn't some historical trap. It was designed for one thing and now it serves another. Okay, so if Mann's goal was to create citizens for a republic, why does school so often feel like you're on an assembly line? If the history is a myth, why does the metaphor feel so painfully, incredibly true? Well, the answer isn't in the intended curriculum, it's in the hidden one. John Taylor Gatto, a former New York State Teacher of the Year, had this incredible insight. He argued that the most important lessons we learn in school have absolutely nothing to do with the subjects. The real lesson is school itself. The structure, the routines, the whole procedure, that's the curriculum that really sticks with us. Gatto pointed out a bunch of these hidden lessons. First, there's confusion. You learn about planets, then adjectives, then slavery, all with no connecting thread. Then there's class position. You're sorted into groups, and you learn to accept your place in the pecking order. Next up is indifference. The bell rings, you drop what you're doing, no matter how into it you are, which teaches you that no task is truly important enough to see through to the end. And finally, the big one, dependency. You learn to just wait for an expert to tell you what to do, what to think, and what you're worth. And this lesson of dependency, it's reinforced by the physical environment itself. I mean, think about it. The long corridors, the identical rooms, the ringing bells, that whole cells and bells model, it's all about prioritizing compliance and control. This structure is what makes school feel like a factory, no matter what its historical origins were. And it's this conditioning, this dependency, that we have to overcome. So if the hidden curriculum's most toxic lesson is dependency, then what's the antidote? How do you actually break that conditioning? Well, it starts by embracing a really powerful philosophical idea: self-ownership. Self-ownership is basically the principle that you are the ultimate authority over your own life. You have the right and the responsibility to control your body, your time, and your choices. It's the massive shift from waiting for instructions to writing your own. It's the direct counter-programming to that learned helplessness taught by the hidden curriculum. And hey, this isn't some new age concept. The philosopher John Locke was talking about this centuries ago. This idea that you and you alone own yourself is a cornerstone of individual liberty. It is the essential philosophical foundation you need to go from being a passive product of a system to becoming the active author of your own life. Okay, so that philosophy of self-ownership sounds great, right? But how do we actually move from that idea to a practical framework for directing our own lives? Well, we can find the answer in a really powerful Japanese concept that takes us from the why to the how. And that concept is Ikigai. It's often translated as a reason to get up in the morning. It's all about finding a sense of purpose and meaning that is uniquely yours. Ikigai is the ultimate expression of self-ownership in action. It's a practical tool for designing a life of intention. The Ikigai framework helps us find our purpose by looking at the intersection of 4 fundamental questions. It's not about just one thing. It's about finding the balance and the harmony between what you love, what you're good at, what the world actually needs from you, and what you can get paid for. Now, when you start combining these elements, you find some really powerful motivators. Loving something you're also good at, that's your passion. Loving something the world needs, that's your mission. When the world needs something you can be paid for, that's a vocation. And when you get paid for something you're good at, that's your profession. But your Ikigai isn't just one of these. It's that sweet spot right in the center, where all 4 of these vital areas overlap. So where does this whole journey leave us? We've traveled from a popular myth about our past all the way to a practical tool we can use to design our future. We've seen that the school is factory idea is basically historical fiction, but we've also figured out why it feels so true, because of a hidden curriculum that teaches dependency. But by embracing the philosophy of self-ownership and using a framework like Ikigai, we can actually move beyond just being processed by a system. We can begin to consciously build a life of purpose on our own terms. Look, knowing the school factory myth is wrong is actually freeing. It means the system isn't some unchangeable 19th century monster. And knowing why it feels true gives us a really clear target, that hidden curriculum of dependency. The antidote is to actively, consciously take control. So I'll leave you with this question. What is one small thing you can do today, right now, to take ownership of your path and start looking for your Ikigai?